Hello everyone, welcome to From the Star Wars Library, where Star Wars is in print, the Force is with the readers, and we again return to 1979 and the newspaper strips. I'm your host, Nathan P. Butler, and this time we're taking a look at when the newspaper strips finally converged back together. You may recall that the newspaper strips under Russ Manning, the original creator of the series, had started out with one story, Gambler's World, to run from March until September of 1979, but only on Mondays through Saturdays. They then took the Sunday strips, for those who only subscribed to the Sunday newspaper, and ran two different stories in there. The Constancia affair up until July, and then after that, a story entitled The Kashyyyk Depths, the one that's unusual because it hasn't been reprinted or re-released online otherwise, at least not officially. Now, we finally get to September of 1979, and from then up until November, they finally produce a new story that brings all the days of the week together. Sunday through Saturday. Imagine that. It's a new story entitled Tatooine Sojourn, and unlike Gambler's World, it's not a very long story. It only runs for a couple of months, again, from early September up through early November of 1979. From here on out, pretty much all the stories in what we think of as classic Star Wars, the early adventures, the Russ Manning era, will tend to be ones that can be collected as single issues when collected by Dark Horse Comics, as this one was. Tatooine Sojourn can be found reprinted as issue number 4 from 1994, of classic Star Wars, The Early Adventures. Collected again, recolored. I mean, pretty much what you would expect from this era of Star Wars publishing. And again, sort of simplistic, cartoony style artwork. But again, unlike the Marvel series, at least the characters from the films look like the characters from the films, even if they are very simplistic style drawings of them. Han, at least, is looking like Han. Chewie looks like Chewie. Luke looks like Luke without the Samson hairdo and so forth. This particular story sees Luke, R2-D2, and C-3PO sent to Tatooine, which Luke is somewhat reluctant to do because of his memories of what has happened there in his own personal past recently. He winds up hooking up with a local rebel, or I guess you can't really call her a rebel. She's sort of a rebel. It's a woman who is a member of the Ogham. Her name is Anduville. Again, I showed you a picture of her a second ago. Anduville of Ogham. This woman here. And the Oghamites, as he calls them, it's not so much that they are rebels as the Empire has sort of stretched out its credit lines and was buying from them, but now is way too much in debt to them. The rebels, however, pay cash, which makes them better to deal with. So at least for now, they're on the rebels' side, if only because the rebels are the ones who make the better customers at the moment. The story centers around this idea that every time a rebel base is being attacked, it is preceded at this point by a strange escape pod type thing crashing down on a planet and an outbreak of a disease called Bledsoes. And they can't quite figure out why this is happening. In the process of investigating this, they will wind up back at Obi-Wan Kenobi's abandoned home, now that Obi-Wan, of course, is dead. They'll wind up facing off with Tusken Raiders at one point until Luke finally contracts this disease, Bledsoes, from a squill, these little creatures that happen to have been inside these escape pods. One of them bites Luke. He winds up carrying Bledsoes and starts to get ill from it. There is a cure, but this outbreak is the beginning of what they think of as what's going to lead to an attack on some type of rebel cell somewhere. Only to realize, and this is freaking weird, okay? What happens is that when you get sick with Bledsoes, it turns your eyes into what they call windows. Essentially, you become starry-eyed. And instead of having eyes that look like regular eyes, they turn completely black. And there's like a star field type of pattern to what is appearing on your eye. And apparently, and again, this defies all science that I know of, the Imperials are able to deal with this virus on a molecular level and alter it so that when it appears in someone's eyes, the specific pattern represents a real star field and a real rebel target for the Imperials to hit. So all they have to do is look into the eyes of someone who's been infected by this, and they know secretly who this target is going to be that the Imperials have apparently targeted and then sent the message through the disease to get the information to those who are going to do it. It really doesn't make a whole lot of logical sense. It takes that whole suspension of disbelief and kind of throws it out the window with you finally finishing the issue going, are you serious? You can't possibly be serious that this really could happen in the galaxy far, far away. But hey, stranger things, I'm talking to you, Waru, the anti-force being in the Crystal Star, stranger things will eventually happen. So I guess we just kind of take it with a grain of salt and assume, hey, it's just kind of one of the things that Star Wars does, especially early on. They have these weird scenarios that really don't seem to be as grounded in reality as much of what we will wind up seeing later. So suffice to say, it's a quick little story with that odd use of Bledsoe's disease, and it is all focused on Luke and the droids, though Luke much, much more than the droids themselves. Is this one that you should check out? In other words, is this essential, and is this going to be something that can be skipped? Gotta tell you, in all respects, this story is not essential and certainly can be skipped by pretty much any Star Wars reader, even the ones that are focusing on reading classic Star Wars, the early adventures, or the Russ Manning stuff. It has little to no effect on anything and is just plain weird. Not a great indication of where the Russ Manning strips can go from here, but of course we're crossing our fingers that they do get better. Suffice to say, that wraps up at least this episode, if not the Manning strips yet. Thank you for watching, and may the Force be with the readers.